All right, I think we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Pig and Whistle Simak group. This is a group that was created by our good friend Shawn D. Standfast, and I've got he made this, in all his AI. So this is the bearded Avenger of Mars, and yeah, it belongs up here. So we'll make sure he's around, But yeah, I mean, just a few words about Shawn. He's the one who started this group. He was a great lover of Simak, and I thought I liked Simak, and then I started to read these books and talk to him, and we talked about a lot of things, but Simak was certainly one of the major conversation points. And every Simak book that I've read has been something that I've liked, some more than others, but he's really instilled in me this love for this author, and certainly want to continue this, in his name or his honor, or he'll be with us all the time. So, but anyway, I greatly appreciate it. It's not. I was thinking about this, and it's not an exaggeration for me to say that he changed the way that I read. His depth of knowledge, his love of the genre, and the love of the history of the genre has launched me in several directions that I just greatly appreciate. I thought I was well into it, but boy, did he open a lot of doors for me. And I look forward to keep going down those paths. So anyway, thank you, Shawn D. Standfast. And yeah, hopefully he's here looking over us with approval as we continue what he gave us. And yeah. So with that, if anybody likes anything, that's great. We could just move right in. Now, the Pig and Whistle is a pub from the book The Goblin Reservation, which was one of Shawn's favorites. He did a top 10 favorite Simak novel video that I'll make sure to put in the comments here, because I watched it again this morning. And but anyway, on to Clifford Simak. So let's just go around the horn. Pat, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure.
Where people can find you? Yeah.
I'm Pat. My channel is Book Chat with Pat. I've been a booktuber for just 2 years, just reached my second anniversary. And I was very new to reading science fiction when I started my channel. And I was an English teacher for almost 40 years, but somehow science fiction was like the one genre that I really felt, that I was really unread in. And, and I've been exploring and, reading at first a lot of really classic science fiction when I first, was getting to know people here on BookTube. And lately I've been reading some contemporary science fiction also, but that was, part of how I got to know Shawn. Although I actually met Shawn in the first ever group read that I did on BookTube when my channel was very new. And we were in a very small group where we were reading Victor Hugo's Les Miserables. And that is also one of Shawn's very favorite books. And I think he had read every translation that existed, in English. And he was, really leading our discussion. And that was how we became friends. And then, I began to talk about science fiction with him, but I actually met him through this other great love of his. So.
Oh, that's great. That's great. That's a book that is on my list. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then here's Ariane. Hello.
Hey, hello.
Hey.
And Gavin. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, my name's Gavin. Channel is Genre Books. I think I started the same week, possibly a week before Pat did. On BookTube, so yep, just gone through the second anniversary as well.
Right.
I started off by thinking it was going to be very much sort of science fiction and fantasy based that I'll be talking about, and in the end I've been pulled in every other direction. And it was, I think my second video I did that Shawn actually reached out. Now, I'd watched his channel before, but I wouldn't presume to approach these people I'd seen on the TV. So that when he reached out and we ended up chatting, and it sort of escalated from there. And we found that because he had such wide interests, that other than science fiction, you would find something else to glom onto to talk to him about. And with me, it was sort of the adventure books or exploration books, and also sort of authors like Lawrence van der Post and people like that. The breadth of his interest as well as the depth of his knowledge was definitely up there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Ira.
Yep. Ira, the channel is SF Words of Wonder. I think I'm coming up to my 3rd anniversary here in April. And I had seen Shawn and was very intimidated to, reach out in the beginning of my channel. And one of my first videos, he reached out and did a really nice comment. And we started chatting and found out one of our favorite authors was Simak. And so we kind of just instantly kind of hit it off. And like Scott said, his breadth of knowledge was amazing, and across all genres. But in science fiction, I mean, he could name which magazine, which month, who was the editor, and just go on and on. He had this like all memorized almost. And so we really hit it off. We would chat a lot on Voxer. I've been reading through Isaac Asimov's entire catalog, and Shawn wanted to do a future history video or talk about it, and he wanted to reread everything. So I was bouncing a lot of ideas off of him. He kind of felt like a mentor to me for a bit, for diving deep into this science fiction thing. And man, he gave me a huge list of nonfiction science fiction books to go over. So I got my work cut out for me.
Yeah, same with me. It was him, and there was a big group. I joined during COVID, and I'm very spotty on my posting and stuff, but it would have been in 2020, and he was one of a group of people that I immediately started watching everything, and inspired me to join. And but I do a lot of stuff outside of YouTube. Like I have a podcast that's been going for like 12 years, and those kinds of things. So sometimes it's hard for me to add this. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I always talk to Shawn, over Voxer and all of that. So cheers to Shawn. Cheers to Shawn. So our subject today, Bring Around the Sun. And I think, I'm guessing that Pat has Ira's got it too. That is like the mightiest cover. I love it. Mine's just on the hardcover. I'm pretty sure this is a book club. Yep, it's a book club edition.
Oh, neat.
Yeah.
So
this was published in 1953, but I believe it was serialized in 52, or started the serialization in Galaxy. And again, Shawn, talking about editors and stuff, and some of the things that I read with Shawn is H.L. Gold was the editor of this one. And he had a reputation of, sending things back with his own edits and things like that. So I don't know where at this point, this is still pretty early in Simak's career. He did publish some in the 30s, but as far as novels, there's not many novels that come before this one. It looks like Cosmic Engineers, Time and Again, Empire, and City. And City, is that a novel or isn't it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but this is just one of his early books.
Mm.
So yeah, Pat, I was hoping, I saw you give a little synopsis of it, and I was hoping, we're definitely going to get spoilery here, but let's start with a non-spoilery synopsis.
I won't be spoilery.
And then we'll do a non-spoilery synopsis. So if anybody doesn't want to be spoiled after that, you can jump off or whatever you need to do. Go ahead, please, Pat.
So Shawn told me that this Ace Double was actually the first paperback edition
very nice.
of it, and I did get this, I think probably through thrift books, but it's in such fragile condition that I was really afraid to read it. It's fallen. It looks like it's intact, but it's not. So then I got this one, which is in a little bit better shape.
Yeah, that is a beautiful cover.
Yeah. I mean,
what book was the one on the ace double paired with? What's on the
right. Cosmic Manhunt by L. Sprague de Camp.
Excellent.
Nice.
Right. So these are fun, but I'm just afraid to do anything with it because it's very, very fragile. But so that was my understanding that the novel was first published in a serialized form in 1952 and 53 in Galaxy Science Fiction magazine. And it is set in the far future of 1977, which, I thought was, kind of funny because I didn't think anything about this book felt like the 1970s as I remember them. But our hero is Jay Vickers, and he's a writer, and I guess a writer of some note. And at the time that the novel opens, he's working on a novel, and he feels like he's on a roll, and he doesn't want to be interrupted, and then he is interrupted, and he gets called in to this meeting in the city that he doesn't want to go to by, I guess it's his agent. I guess.
It sounds right. Yep.
And so he gets called into this meeting where he is informed about a world that he's just kind of becoming aware of, that there is some company somewhere that is producing these forever products, things that will never break down, gadgets, razor blades, light bulbs, and cars, the forever car that will never wear out or break down. And he gets called into this meeting where this man named Mr. Crawford wants him to basically write about what is happening. And he stands up and says that he doesn't want any part of this. But that's sort of like the inciting incident, that gets the narrative rolling. Then he goes back home. He has this older man neighbor named Horton Flanders, and he's a guy who comes over and visits him usually at night and talks to him, and suddenly Horton Flanders is gone. He disappears, and there is some, I guess, suspicion that Jay Vickers may have something to do with this man's disappearance, because he seems to be the last person to have had any contact with him. And Jay kind of takes off. He sort of goes on the run, but not before getting a message from Horton Flanders telling him that he needs to go back to his roots, which sends him back to his childhood home, where he finds this toy, this top, a spinning top that he remembers from his childhood. And somehow this gadget can send the person using it into another world, into a sort of parallel universe. And that's where he becomes aware that there are multiple Earths that exist, and that there are some kind of people, mutants, they become known as, who have the ability to travel between worlds. So
wonderful.
Good job.
Thank you. That's fabulous. That's excellent. So yeah, before we jump into all kinds of spoilers and such, how about some impressions? How about Gavin? You want to start with that? What was your impression of this book? Thumbs up or down, or
I think a thumbs up.
neutral? Good.
Yeah, it's it has a lot of, as I've now read more Simak, I can see the hallmarks when they're on the page. So there is this, he is always hankering after some sort of bucolic piece. He wants his home comforts.
Yes.
And Vickers absolutely displays that. Where you say you don't recognize it as the 1970s, I think it's because a lot of what was being written was, I mean, it was pre-1950s, the way he's describing stuff. It's a very sort of simple life that Vickers is leaving.
Right.
And even this amazing new technology is just stuff like razor blades and light bulbs. My impression of it, it goes in so many directions. I actually felt it was a little bit like a Philip K. Dick book, but one that doesn't have Philip K. Dick's nihilism, because he's talking about parallel worlds, conspiracies. There's some psionic powers. There are mutants, androids, clones, disappearances, and everything is happening at pretty much a breathless pace as well. I mean, this is a short book. It's only 150 odd pages long, but there's 51 chapters.
Yeah.
It's scene after scene after scene. I mean, that was my first impression. What I found interesting that Simak seems to be very much he has a bit of an anti-authoritarian streak. He doesn't like the big companies.
Right.
Anytime I've read about them, in Empire, it's obvious they're the evil guys. Even in the Goblin Reservation is where the university becomes more business-like. The things, our characters sort of part ways with them. You're not supposed to be running it like a business. You're supposed to be running it like a university. And here we can see these products are obviously really good and they last forever. And actually giving people stuff that lasts forever and doesn't become obsolete. I mean, there's a quote here. It says it's described by this guy who is trying to hire him to write an attack piece. He says it's a well-planned attack on the world economy, a deliberate effort to undermine the social and economic system of our way of life, and after that, of course, the political system. So, I mean, there's extrapolation there, but what they seem to be doing is actually quite altruistic. It's very difficult to attack them for products that never break down, and then be able to supply people who are put out of jobs with food free of charge. But then it isn't stopping with just these gadgets. Like Pat says, there's the cars, and then there's homes and clothes. The only other thing it reminded me a little bit of is an old Ealing comedy called The Man in the White Suit, where I think it's Alec Guinness invents this fabric that does not rip, it doesn't stain, it doesn't age, and all of the companies are out to get him because you can't have that. We need to be able to sell clothes all of the time. With this material, you won't be able to do that. So there's a little bit of that in there as well. And then you have this small town setting where he goes back to his the place where he grew up, and he always seems to be hankering after sort of going back to something like that. And these sort of virgin parallel worlds offer that kind of opportunity on a global scale.
Excellent. Yeah, Ira, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I overall liked it. I think somewhere around the middle of the pack for most of what I read from Simak. The beginning reminded me a little bit of the Weapon Shops of Isher from A. Van Vogt, where you have this mysterious company setting up, disrupting things, and you're not sure where he's going with it. He takes a different path than Van Vogt did. But like Gavin mentioned, Van Vogt really influenced a lot of Philip K. Dick. And this one really kind of had some weirdness and some interesting things going on with it. And I was thinking it was a little different than a lot of Simak's books, but then think maybe in the last third or so, you get a lot of kind of philosophical musings going on inside of our characters' heads, which I was like, okay, there it is.
Yeah, lots of that.
And there, yeah, he's always, I think he's an optimist, and even his villains aren't like, they're like misguided people. They're not usually vicious, malicious people, And I think we get that more or less in here. And so I like his style of writing and his philosophy on life and how he writes about it. So
yeah, me too. Pat, did you want to give some initial impressions?
Yeah, I also I enjoyed it. It's not, I haven't read as much Simak as you gentlemen have. So it's not one of my top books. I think Way Station is still my favorite. But I really liked it. And I love the world, the sort of small town world that he creates. And I even noticed this time around, he calls his town Cliffwood, which I thought was a nod to himself, Clifford D. Simak, created.
Yeah.
I thought that was sweet. I like the way he writes. I like his voice. And I like the sort of pastoral settings that he creates. I don't know how typical that is in science fiction, but
yeah, and that's what I enjoy too. I did enjoy this book quite a bit. Again, the philosophy and everything like that is something I'm into. There's an optimism from him that I appreciate so much, and it might be because it's rare in science fiction now. It may not have been so rare in the 50s and 60s, but a lot of the science fiction that I read that's modern is very dystopic and very nihilistic. And I like what Gavin said. It's like Philip K. Dick without the nihilism, because there's hope in this. There's still hope, and there always is. And he's always looking. There's knowledge out in the stars, and if we can just get a hold of that, it's like we're in a terrible part of human history right now, and if we can get past this, we're going to be okay. And I feel like, again, that's kind of what like Star Trek was, the original series. But again, that's become dystopic in the modern version. One of the really interesting things I learned is there's a critic named David Pringle. He wrote a book in 1985 called The 100 Best Science Fiction Novels. And they were all, it says, an English language selection, 1949 to 1984, right? But what was interesting is he included 2 Simaks in this list, and one was Way Station, and the other one was this one. And I thought that was just surprising because you'd expect the big 2, City and Way Station, So I just wanted to read a paragraph here. He says, "It is a tall tale indeed, and it becomes too complicated for its own good. Although the prose style is plain, Simak introduces a new plot twist in almost every chapter, so that the final impression on the reader is that this is a very ornate book, part mystery story, part satire on the McCarthyite era with its fears of internal conspiracy, part pastoral meditation, part economic speculation, part gosh-wow adventure yarn of mutants and robots and wonderful technological panaceas." And I thought that was cool. And he later on, he says, he has always shown an antipathy to cities, to the capitalistic economic system, though he is an agrarian populist rather than a socialist. And I looked up what agrarian populist is, and it's more of a desire not to be run by the cities, the needs of the cities, sort of to protect the agrarian life, rather than have it be a servant to the society, have it be part of society, right? So but that, so I'm not sure where he got that. I don't know if Simak himself ever said that, but it certainly seems to fit because he's not antagonistic towards people. He just wants, a way of life to exist.
Right.
So, yeah. But yeah, with that, the door's wide open, for spoilers and such. But yeah, this whole idea of these parallel Earths, and I think that's part of what Pringle is talking about in that review, is this idea that it's a tall tale, because the idea that there are an infinite number of Earths, seconds behind, this one's seconds behind this one, and you can just jump, and when you've filled that one up, you can move on to the next one. That is like a fairy tale, isn't it? It's like it's a utopia in itself. No longer do you need to worry as much about these things, because it's like, yeah, if you've ruined this page, I can go get a new piece of paper. But unfortunately that's what the tall tale piece is, because it's obviously incredibly unlikely, but yet fascinating. And the idea that we could get there without spaceships and all this other stuff, and he's really clear, a couple of times, here in the 50s, which is the middle of the Cold War. We're after World War II. I can't remember when in the 50s the Korean War started. But, this warlike tendency Simak brings up all the time, in City. So he wrote City right before this. So this is definitely where he was at this time, talking about the disappointment that humanity is using their intellect to do what it is that we're doing, and the idea of collapsing it is really interesting to me. Again, to bring up Star Trek, there's an idea. It's like, how do we get from here to there? If Star Trek is some kind of a goal, where humanity has solved a lot of their problems, and now we're living in this economic way where everything's plentiful, people don't seem to have need, racism seems to have disappeared, at least among the humans, right? How do we get from here to there, in an economic system, because I had to laugh, when it was talking about things like, here's a razor blade that'll never break, and here's a car that'll never break, and the reaction of the whole economic system and what that would do to the economic system. Because here in the United States, I recall really wondering what was going on when satellite TV started to become a thing, and Congress would pass laws to protect the cable TV companies and do things like, you can only have the local stations on the cable TV, you can't have them on the satellite TV, right? Which hobbled the satellite folks, right? And it was like a protection of an existing thing. And I think we can find a lot of examples of that. So this idea that we could come up with these things that never break, and then the flip side of that is, are we designing things that break on purpose, right? So that, because I do know there were some things that were made in the 50s that still work, and I think you'd be pretty hard pressed to find that in modern things.
I think you what you said there about the TV reminds me. I did exactly the same thing with music. It's when Napster came on, the authorities came down like a ton of bricks on anyone who was sharing these files, anyone who was using it, until they could find a way for the companies to actually do it themselves, over through iTunes and then through Spotify.
Yeah, and
they've just found a way of something which you could download and keep forever. You are now sort of renting for $10, $15, $20 a month and not own. So there is the way I saw this infinite set of worlds stretching out. That, I mean, maybe it's being not an American looking at it, but that just seemed like an endless America. You're always sort of going further on, colonizing it, but in a much nicer way, because these places are empty,
right?
But in such a way that everyone is going to get, their parcel of land.
Excellent. Yeah.
I mean, what he's written is an actual solution for everything. It's post scarcity, but that's because the resources are endless. And obviously, that's a square we can't circle in the real world. But it's definitely a nice thought.
Yeah, I think the term disruptive technology has been used a lot, but I think it's been going on forever. And he was showing a version of that, and I think Scott, you were talking about like planned obsolescence.
Mm-hmm.
Is another term that comes up a lot.
Yep.
And yeah, so he was thinking about those things. And
yeah. And again, sorry, Pat, if you
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were about to say something, but it is, that's only one aspect of the book too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this, that's what we open with, and what a lot of it is about at that time, is, what is this forever car, and what's going on, and then we get into this idea of mutants, that are putting these in, and I couldn't help but think, of X-Men. It read just like X-Men. Suddenly, the world is against mutants, and on the TV you see someone, with a mutant sign on themselves, that has been I can't remember if they were hung or something like that, but it was just this idea of suddenly there's this group, and that all of humanity is against. And man, there was some amazing language in there. I wanted to look at it. Let's see. I'm looking at a page where I had highlighted some things, but it had something to do with there were people out in the middle lands or whatever. I'm trying to remember how he put it, but there was a deep hatred. Where was that? There it is. Oh, actually, it was very late in the book, page 200. It said, let's see. And then it was then that he fully understood. I'm on page 200 of my book. And then it was then that he fully understood that even here in the heartland of the nation, in the farms and little villages, in the roadside eating places, there was boiling hate. That, he told himself, was the measure of the culture that had been built upon the earth, a culture founded on a hatred and a terrible pride and a suspicion of everyone who did not talk the same language or eat the same food or dress the same as you did. Incredible. That's a nice paragraph right there. But yeah, I mean, so obviously there's ties to reality other than X-Men, but I'm just like, X-Men touched these same things, and he was doing it in 1953. I think that's really cool.
And showing that hatred is being inculcated in the populace by those people who have the vested interests as well.
Right.
So,
yeah.
I mean, it starts off it starts off with this offer to write this hit piece on these everlasting products. And then they find a way that these people can't advertise at all. So then they go and open a shop. And then they expand their ranges. And then, I'm not quite sure how much organization there is behind that, but their game, they were always one step ahead of these incumbent firms who were just scrabbling to catch up. But vilifying people is a very good way of doing that job for you. Is that picture of they've got a whole horde of wealth, you've got a tiny little bit of wealth, and they're telling you that person wants your tiny bit,
right?
Not the bit that they don't want a slice of the massive pie that they've got. It's your piece that they're after.
And in the beginning, we don't know how deeply rooted that guy is. I forget his name, the guy who wanted the hit piece written.
Crawford.
Crawford, right.
Yeah, Crawford. At the end, we find out he had everybody. I mean, it was a big, giant conspiracy. All the world leaders, or in the U.S. at least, I guess.
Yeah.
I didn't see that coming. That surprised me. What happened with him? There were a couple of surprises in here. I didn't see that one.
Yeah, and then let's see, another part that I marked. I just wrote that it was Bradbury-esque, but it's about that top. It was just beautiful. I mean, I just felt like I was reading Bradbury for a minute. So it was a child's top, battered now, and with all its color gone. I'm on page 75 of mine. With all its color gone, but once it had been bright and colorful, and when you pumped it on the floor, it had spun and whistled. He had gotten it for Christmas, he remembered, and it had been a favorite toy. He picked it up and held its battered metal with sudden tenderness and wondered how it had gotten there. It was a part of his past catching up with him, a dead and useless thing to everyone in all the world, except the boy to whom it had once belonged. It had been a striped top, and the colors had run in spiraling streaks when you spun it, and there had been a point, he remembered, when each streak ran and disappeared, and another streak came up, and it disappeared, and then another. I just, I loved it. Asimov, he talked about how his prose style is plain. Again, I'm pointing at David Pringle here, but Asimov was said to be that way too. And there's, and Bradbury was very stylistic, so there's something to be said, when you're writing something that is so plain that you don't notice it. I think that that's really good writing myself. You know what I mean? There's some people that are writing stylistically, and the style is part of what they're doing. But Simak is writing for plain, just transfer of information. It's like, I think both him and Asimov, there are times where the author becomes invisible, in my opinion.
Yeah, and when you mention Asimov, I just read his autobiography, and his whole goal was to make his writing look like you had a sparkling clean pane of glass and you could see the exact scene. There's no dirt on it, But before that, he had mentioned the person he tried to mimic the most was Clifford Simak.
No kidding.
Interesting.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah.
Because he loved the way he wrote, and didn't feel like he wrote as good as Simak.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's great. Yeah, because I do like it. I do like his style very much.
Well, it's sort of, it is that pared down. There are no long sentences. There are no very descriptive passages. That is a very sort of mid-century American way of writing, I think. I mean, I'm not going to put it on the same level, but you could see the same in Steinbeck. Sure. You could probably see it to the nth degree in Hemingway. That is very almost terse in its conveyance of information. And I think you notice it in Simak because everything is pretty much calm, even though there's a lot of activity going on. The stakes are never made emotive. It's never, absolute peril, and very, even when he's at his pulpiest, there is still that sort of sense of perspective here of just telling you what's going to be happening, rather than, all of the exclamation marks of E.E. Doc Smith, or all of the wild fantasies of some of those early writers. It's very much calm, I think, being shown.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah,
I get memories, or I get Steinbeck feelings too, vibes when I read Simak. It does feel a little like, we just read a lot of Steinbeck last summer. We did a summer of Steinbeck, and I get that sort of that feeling, especially when he's writing about the landscape.
Yeah, and he definitely conveys that love of the country life. When Vickers, when he went to that other planet, and it was empty, that was something too. He's looking at all of that. What do we think about the pretentionists?
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, it's like a rising movement of people. Now, I know that in the history of science fiction, I think wasn't it L. Sprague de Camp, who was really in, what do they call it, the Society of Creative Anachronism? Was it de Camp that was totally into that? I think Asimov was peripheral on that, but these were people that used to. They're like recreating periods of history, in costuming and things like that. For some reason, L. Sprague de Camp is who is in my head on that one.
He just looked like he was from a different century.
He did, didn't he? Yeah, he had that magnificent goatee. But yeah, it's an interesting thing, and I'm thinking of like Bradbury wasn't it Fahrenheit 451 where it was the pure escapism. There was, I think that this fellow's wife was escaping into television pretty much. She had like a room where she was basically falling away from the world too much, right?
She was watching her stories, sort of like her soap operas.
Yeah, so she was falling away into that. Yeah. But it's just an interesting thing in 1953 to be thinking about, because I feel like some of these things have come true in a much deeper level, with the internet and the phones and things like that, and sort of escaping what's around you by going elsewhere.
Right.
But it did seem that that was their goal, but they were doing it with, again, costumes and such. I thought that was a really interesting thing. And then the idea that those people were the ones that could be ready for understanding what's happening for real, and not the people that were not into that, I think that's a cool thought too. It's like, who's more ready for aliens to arrive than people who read science fiction? You know what I mean?
Practicing.
Yeah, we're all practicing. So yeah, I just thought that was an interesting movement. Yeah, and then I have, he describes the Earth's failure. I had something marked there too.
Yeah, I did too.
Go ahead and read it if you have.
No, I'm looking for it. I flipped by before and I saw it, and then I don't know if I can find it again now.
Okay.
I had outlined that one too.
Okay, I found it. I'm on 152.
Oh, okay.
In my edition. There was an Earth that was a failure. Somewhere on the long path that led up from apedom, they had taken the wrong turning and had traveled since that day a long road of misery. There was brilliance in these people, and goodness and ability, but they had turned their brilliance and their ability into channels of hate and arrogance, and their goodness had been buried in selfishness. They were good people and were worth saving, as a drunkard or a criminal is worthy of rehabilitation. But to save them, you must get them out of their neighborhood that they live in. You must get them out of the neighborhood they live in, out of the slums of human thought and method. There could be no other way of giving them the opportunity to break themselves of old habits, of the ingrown habits of generation after generation of hate and greed and killing. Wow. See, I mean, that seems pretty pessimistic, right? But at the same time, it's hopeful, because in this book, there's a solution. Yeah,
there's a way out there, but I mean, how much is he describing the world he sees around him?
Absolutely is. Yeah,
it's which is, I mean, I wasn't about in the 50s, but when you think of the 1950s, it's all very much sort of everything being gleaming and new, and massive advances made. But
yeah,
that's only one part of the story. That's the bit that I've been told.
Yeah. In some of his interviews, Shawn and I actually we found nine interviews that were text. But in one of those interviews, he was talking about the intellect as a survival mechanism in evolution, and he openly wondered what could the next thing be? Could something be above that? Like, could something come along that is better than intellect at survivability? And he said, I have no idea what that could be. He said, but I feel like it's out there. You know
Robots?
what I mean? Maybe. But it was a very fascinating idea. He's saying, what human beings have over the other creatures is intellect. And the fact that, okay, that made us the most survivable species, and then what could come next? And he thought about that a lot. And I think that's tangentially related to that, because he's saying, what did we do with our intellect? This is what we're doing with it. And in order for us to think new thoughts and think of different ways, we need to kind of get out of our ways. And I think there's something to that. Again, we have all these forces, we go back to like cable television. You have all these forces that are in motion, and it's hard to stop them. you know, and have people think of different ways, because it's also frightening. It's like, I'm making money doing this. How am I going to do that now? Those are hard things to stop that momentum, as we can see with our events today.
Yeah, absolutely. This is making me think a lot of today.
Last summer, I visited the last Blockbuster in existence.
Did you really? In Oregon? Was it Bend, Oregon?
Bend, Oregon.
I love it. I drove by that once. Yeah.
One of the things that I thought was very hopeful about this book, and I don't know if Simak intended this, but, you know, talking about Simak's emphasis on the intellect, I think this book also offers us the possibility of love and love between people. And I, you know, that really struck me, because in the beginning, Jay Vickers is really alone. You know, even the little girl who wanders over for breakfast one morning and she's like, you know, why aren't you married? You know, everybody gets married, you know, and he says, yeah, there was a girl once, you know, and he goes off into this sort of reverie. But, you know, Anne a little bit later says to him, you know, like, you're so selfish. You're so wrapped up in your own mind. You know, you're an entity unto yourself, you know, but at the end, you know, he wants to get back to Anne. He wants to find her. And at first he's terrified that she is, you know, the other person that, you know, there 3 people that are from the same essence, but then he realizes that she isn't really part of him. Right. She is a separate entity, and so he can love her. You know, there can be that, and it ends on that hopeful note. I thought so. I thought there was something very powerful in that. You know,
that was a powerful idea, and that feels like Philip K. Dick to me. You know, where you've got like, you split this person into 3 pieces, or basically clone him 3 times, kind of, you know, with using an android body. That's a great idea.
Yeah. So I have a question on that. So in my mind, the original, some original human somehow made the jump to one of these alternate worlds, I assume, maybe unaided. And then there was androids there that then split him or turned him into 3 people. And
that happened.
His parents are there in some sort of stasis as well.
Yeah.
Like I still have some questions in my mind about all of
I have questions. Yeah. I think that you're right. Yes. Like, you know, how did that happen first? Because it turned out that the top was not actually some magical device, right? It was something that focused him.
Yeah.
So that he could do the thing, but apparently he could do the thing. It's like you had the power to go home all along, you know. So he had that. So there are people that just have that ability. I think.
Right.
That's what I was getting. Is anybody getting anything different?
Yeah, I thought that was the power of the mutation, wasn't it?
Right.
But didn't it turn out that the mutants they're actually androids? They're just using that term on them, right?
No, I think that you have mutants and then you have androids too. I think that not every mutant was an android. I don't think. That's what I believe anyway. So I think, like, his parents. See, now you're making me wonder here. Where was his parents? I can't remember. Were his parents androids?
I think their conscience had been downloaded until they solved immortality, and then once that happened,
I knew that they were in a stasis.
Yes,
it's like when they died, they went into a stasis.
Yeah, and
they're actually alive but waiting.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, but I didn't know if that made them androids or not.
Yeah.
So, but interesting. But your point about, you know, when they got there to this other world, that there were things going on the other world, I think is right, because there were hints or implications that there was aliens involved, races that were not human were involved.
Plus, I don't think we mentioned it too much, but there was some sort of telepathic natural ability that some people had to read into the stars. And Anne had this it was kind of
Right.
hinted that she possibly had that.
Yeah. Yeah. They had that, and they had the hunches, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's where the hunches came from, but the idea that that they could actually be downloading whatever, and I remember he talked a little bit about, when you're downloading this stuff or accessing it, there's going to be a lot that's really not pertinent to us, and you've got to sift it. You've got to figure out what is applicable.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's some of the weirdness that I liked about this one. It would favor a reread almost to see if you could piece it together, if you threw little hints out of what was really going on and how all this started.
Yeah. But it's definitely another kitchen sink book.
Yeah.
That's what he seems to be doing.
Pringle got it right. Every chapter pretty much had a twist.
Yeah. Yeah. Hello, Judy.
Hi, Judy.
Hi, Judy.
Yeah. So,
What about-
go ahead.
Huddle watch.
Huddle watch.
I got one huddle.
That's what I got too. I noticed one.
Yeah.
One huddle. Yeah. But yeah, that's got to be his favorite word. It's got to be. I think that, other than the word "and," maybe it's got to be one of those that appears the most. Oh, that's fun. That's fun.
Well, he was like hiding from those people at one point. He jumped in like a haystack, or he was hiding somewhere.
Uh-huh.
And he used a different word. It wasn't huddle. And I don't even think it was hiding. It was something. And I was like, he could have just said he huddled down. And then a little while later, he broke out the huddle.
Yeah.
Like, all right.
Maybe in his second draft, he was like, I can't use it twice. You use it once.
Scratch out huddle, put in hunker.
Yeah, I think it was
Yeah.
It's more powerful if there's just one.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's
So who had one of those spinning tops as a child?
I had one.
I did.
It was pretty clear in my memory. Yeah. What he was describing, I was like, I know what that is. I know what it sounds like. I know what it feels like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That
It's
was
a little bit flying saucer shaped as well, but I'm sure that was
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that he painted it. So I just get this thing painted so I could try it out.
Aw.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was great. It was great.
Mhm.
Very good. Yeah. And
The
again,
only one I could think of a spinning top would be Inception, which deals with parallel realities in another way.
Yeah.
But again, that's just a focal point to control it rather than the actual thing itself.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. I think that top fell at the end of the movie. It fell. It was real. I love it. I love it. Well, we're approaching an hour here, folks. I really did enjoy this. Again, and this is so early in his career, but all those elements. I recently read The Visitors, which is one of his last ones.
Oh.
And in that, there's a car. There's kind of a forever car.
Really?
That's part of this story. Yeah.
And also in this one, he talked about kind of like a net zero home. These homes that were going to come onto the market. They were solar powered, but he didn't describe it. Solar panels were not a thing back then, but he envisioned some way to harness the power of the sun and be off grid, basically.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
It's way cool. I love it.
I had a question about the houses. When in the beginning of the novel, when Vickers and Anne, I think like they just sort of like drop in and do like a tour of one of them, and sort of like the real estate agent is there talking about it, and they're asking questions, and I think it's Anne. I'm not sure who's speaking. Yeah, it's Anne. She says, one thing is bothering me. You remember all that equipment you mentioned, the washer, the refrigerator. Yes, certainly. But you didn't mention anything about a stove. And then the salesman said, oh, didn't I? How could I have forgotten that? But I thought, why was that emphasized there? Do these houses not have stoves? Because
I think they don't. I think the idea is that they're going to get their food from somewhere else.
Those carbohydrates. They're all
Right.
right.
The
That's
food
what
banks.
Yeah.
I wondered, was this a hint, that we're not picking up
I
on?
think it was. Yeah. That's a nice catch. That's a really great catch.
Yeah.
But you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love that detail.
$500 a room.
I'll take it.
Get me one.
Yeah, we can make it bigger later.
Yeah,
right?
and just add, if you want a 4-bedroom, just go with a 5 because it's only $500 more.
Yeah, exactly.
You bet. Oh shoot! Well, this has been fun, you guys. Is there anything else you'd like to say? Any place we didn't go that you want to go?
It's great.
Feel like we did her. All right, this is next.
This is a good one to start back up on.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
This is next for next month. Time is the simplest thing. Oh, look at that! Awesome.
Me and
Guess
Pat.
who's going to be doing e-reading of it?
E-reading, I love it.
Cool.
Yeah,
Me and Pat got similar libraries here.
Oh, look at that!
Look at
Very nice. Oh, that's the best. That's so great. Well, cool. All right. Well, thank you all. And
Thanks
I
for
hope
hosting,
you enjoy
Scott.
the rest of your day. You bet.
Yes,
Yeah, I'm so happy to do this. I can't even tell you. So,
Me too.
looking forward to continuing, y'all.
Wonderful.
All right.
Okay.
Take care, everybody.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.